The life of Albert Einstein. Once upon a time, on March 14, 1879, a baby boy named Albert Einstein was born in the city of Ulm in Germany. His parents, Hermann and Pauline Einstein, were excited and loved their new son very much. But Albert was a little different. He didn't talk much at first, and his parents wondered if he would ever learn to talk. But Albert was simply taking his time. He loved looking around and thinking deeply about everything, even as a little baby. When Albert finally started talking, he surprised his parents by asking very thoughtful questions. He was always curious and wanted to know how things worked. When he was 5 years old, he became very sick, and his father gave him a small gift to cheer him up. A little compass. Albert had never seen anything like it. He held the compass in his hand and watched how the tiny needle inside always pointed in the same direction. He turned it and tilted it, but the needle kept pointing north. Albert was amazed. He wondered why the needle moved, even when he didn't touch it. This compass sparked Albert's love for science and made him curious about the invisible forces that make things work. Albert loved to think about the mysteries of the world. When he went to school, he learned quickly, especially in math. But sometimes he got bored because he didn't like the way school was taught. In those days, students had to memorize everything, and there wasn't much time for asking questions. Albert didn't like just following rules without understanding why. He wanted to think in his own way. This sometimes made his teachers think he wasn't paying attention or that he didn't want to learn. But Albert was actually daydreaming about big ideas. Albert continued to study and grow, but he didn't always fit in with other kids. He preferred to read books and think by himself. He loved music, especially playing the violin. His mother, Pauline, taught him to play, and music became a lifelong joy for Albert. Listening to and playing music helped him relax and think even more deeply. When Albert was a teenager, his family moved to a new country called Switzerland. Life was different there, and Albert went to a new school. He was very good at math and science, but sometimes he found school frustrating. He wanted to understand the universe, and he had many questions that no one could answer yet. After he finished high school, he went to a university called the Polytechnic in Zurich, Switzerland, to study math and physics. Albert worked very hard at the university and learned as much as he could. He loved studying how things moved and how energy worked, and he started to imagine even bigger questions. When he finished school, he wanted to be a teacher, but he couldn't find a teaching job right away. Instead, he got a job at the patent office in Bern, Switzerland. A patent office is a place where people send their inventions to be checked to make sure no one else has made the same thing. It wasn't a very exciting job, but Albert was able to do his work quickly, so he had time to think about his own scientific ideas. While working at the patent office, Albert kept thinking about his questions about the universe. He asked himself, what would it be like to ride on a beam of light? He wondered what would happen to time, speed, and space if you could move as fast as light. These questions stayed with him, and he thought about them for many years. In 1905, Albert had a big year. He called it his miracle year because he wrote 4 very important papers that changed the way people understood the universe. These papers talked about light, tiny particles called atoms, and even how space and time worked together. One of his papers introduced a new theory called the theory of relativity. Albert's theory said that space and time weren't always the same for everyone. They could change depending on how fast you were moving. This was a brand new idea that surprised many people. In his theory of relativity, Albert explained that time could go slower or faster based on how fast an object was moving. Imagine a spaceship traveling close to the speed of light. Time would move more slowly for the people on the spaceship compared to people on Earth. Albert's idea showed that space and time are like a giant fabric that can stretch, bend, and twist depending on how things are moving. This was a very big discovery, and people were amazed. Albert also came up with a famous formula, E=mc². This formula is a short way of saying that energy E and mass m, which is the amount of stuff in something, are connected. The c stands for the speed of light, which is incredibly fast. Albert's formula showed that even a tiny amount of mass could be turned into a huge amount of energy. This idea became very important later on, especially in the creation of energy sources. People around the world began to see Albert as a genius who could understand things that no one else could. As Albert's work became more famous, he won an important award called the Nobel Prize in 1921. The Nobel Prize is given to people who make big contributions to science, literature, or peace. Albert was awarded the Nobel Prize for his work on the photoelectric effect, which showed that light could behave like tiny particles. This discovery helped scientists understand more about light and even led to the development of modern technologies, like solar panels. As Albert became more well-known, he continued to work on new ideas and help other scientists with their studies. He also became a professor, teaching students who were just as curious as he was. In 1933, life in Germany became very dangerous because some leaders were being unkind and unfair to people. Albert didn't feel safe, so he decided to move to the United States. He started working at a university called Princeton in New Jersey. Albert liked it there, and he felt happy to work with other scientists and students who loved learning as much as he did. While in America, Albert became known not only for his ideas but also for his kindness and wisdom. He wanted the world to be a peaceful place, and he was worried about people using science to harm others. Albert spoke out against war and tried to remind people to use their knowledge for good things. Even though his formula, E=mc², was later used in the creation of the atomic bomb. Albert always wished that people would only use science to help others. Albert continued to study, think, and ask big questions all his life. He loved to wonder about the mysteries of the universe, and he never stopped learning. Even in his older years, Albert would sit quietly, imagining and working on problems that no one else could solve. He continued to play the violin and enjoyed music until the end of his life. He believed that imagination was just as important as knowledge, and he encouraged young people to be curious and to keep asking questions. Albert Einstein passed away on April 18, 1955, leaving behind a legacy of ideas and discoveries. People all over the world remember him as one of the greatest scientists who ever lived. His theories about space, time, and energy changed the world and continue to help scientists today understand the universe better. Albert Einstein's life reminds us to stay curious, keep asking questions, and use knowledge to make the world a better place. He showed everyone that it's okay to think differently, to dream big, and to believe in the power of imagination. Thanks to Albert Einstein, we know that one person's ideas can truly change the world.